We mentioned also lifting heavy, not just pumping out high reps with light weights. We want to focus on actually challenging the muscles in the gym. So keep those strength training workouts productive. Say like
I was just gonna say, I appreciate you sorting out the progressive overload because wasn't quite sure what that meant. Is it just like constantly like increasing your weight slowly? Is that what that is?
basically, yeah. I mean, making progress over time. You want to see some sort of measurable progress. And again, it doesn't mean you're killing yourself in the gym or you're training to failure or anything like that. Like, am I lifting more this month than I was last month? Like, if you can look at it in the bigger picture like that, is there some sort of progression? And it's not going to be for every exercise either. This is something I want to clarify too. Like, see a lot of guys saying, well, like I'm not making gains on my bicep curls, or I'm not making gains on my side lateral raises, or my pec deck flies, or some of the isolation exercises. Sometimes, I mean, they can stay in at the same weight for weeks or months on end. But in your big compound lifts, like a leg press or a chest press or a row or a deadlift or something like that, you should see those weights going up. You should see some sort of progressive overload. And also your body weight, like with push-ups, you should be able to do more push-ups or more pull-ups or whatever. But you want to just see some sort of progression. That's as long as you're seeing progression and you are challenging yourself, like you're not just, going through these pansy workouts curling soup cans or something like that, or you're doing a Richard Simmons sweating to the oldie, curling cans of soup. Like that's not strength training, right? I know he called it strength training, but that's not strength training. You actually have to challenge yourself, right? You have to feel, okay, I can feel the muscles working. I'm exerting some effort here, but at the same time, you want it to be manageable effort and not just killing yourself in the gym. You look at a lot of the young guys, especially like in their late teens, early 20s. That's what you don't want to do. I was at the gym the other day. I was training one of my in-person coaching students, and at the bench next to us, there was a guy there, had two plates per side on the bench press, and he was straining and struggling, and his buddies who were his spotters were just watching him. And I was like, Jesus, guys, like, are you going to help him? And he was just straining and struggling and shaking, and finally he managed to lock it out on his own. But I was like, that could have been a muscle tear just waiting to happen, right? Like if you were stuck and you're straining and straining, like it's not worth it because yeah, you may lock it out and complete the rep, or you may tear a pec or blow out a rotator cuff. It's not worth it.
Now you tell me.
Now
Yeah.
I should have heard this long ago.
No, I've got this injured arm, so I'm in this like I'm going lighter weight and I'm trying to like figure out at what point on a shoulder press with a machine rather than a bar, and I can do it without pain. And then I just do higher reps. I don't know how to gauge when I'm actually improving or making.
That's different. Like if you're working around an injury, it's okay to train with lighter weight, higher reps, and just feel the muscles working because you're still in that rehab phase. But once you're to the point where you can train and actually make progress with that shoulder again, when the form starts to break down, like that's when you should stop.
What if one arm goes up and the other one's struggling?
Yeah, stop, right? Like that would definitely be a stop. Like especially if you're doing dumbbell exercises, one dumbbell goes up, the other one doesn't, stop. Like you or anything like that. Like if you're doing a bench press and one side starts to lock out before the other, your form breaks down, stop the set. Or even if you're doing a machine move and you're struggling, you get to the point where it's starting to be a grind and the tempo is slowing down and you're really grinding it out, stop, right? It's not worth it. When the repetition starts to slow down, you completed that last rep, but I don't want you to try for another because that one could be like a 50-50. Like you may get it, you may not. It's not worth the risk. Like let's just rack the weight with a rep in reserve.
So on a leg press, let's say you're doing pretty good full range, and then you're starting to feel like, okay, I can do half range, no problem. Should I? And you start to wonder if you should go fuller or not. Is that the time to stop?
Yeah, if you can't comfortably do a full range rep, rack the weight. And the thing is, as long as you're keeping track of your numbers, you can still make progress in that sub-maximal range. Let's just say you're only going to 90%. You're always leaving 10% buffer, right? You got that 10% error room. But you can still raise that 90% each time. Like you can still add an extra rep or add an extra bit of weight and still keep it below red line. And it's amazing how much you can progress that way. And very often you can actually make faster progress because you're able to recover better not risk those injuries. So you're not pushing yourself to the point where, okay, this hurts. I mean, one of the guys I'm training in the gym now is like I've took him through every single workout he's done for the past year. And he's done this textbook. Like we've got a notebook where we're keeping track of all his weights, and I've never let him go to failure. Like I've never let him go to the point where he's been stapled to the bench with a bench press, or get to the point where he started to pull a deadlift and couldn't lock it out, or anything like that. Like every set he's done, if he starts to struggle and like say with a machine exercise, like if he starts to push and to struggle, I say stop. And he's always done that. So he's never really pushed himself to true failure like most people do. And he's never had an injury. I mean, knock on wood, hopefully he doesn't, but he's been training for a full year now, and his strength is more than doubled. Like it's just crazy to see. A couple weeks ago, he pulled a trap bar deadlift, 440 pounds. And the first time he pulled a trap bar deadlift, it was like 200 pounds. He's more than doubled his strength in the last year. He's just like a clockwork because, I mean, we're in there and I'm prescribing the exercises and I tell him when to push and when to stop, right? And he's catching on to it now, but it's just amazing to see. And he always knows, like, as soon as he starts to struggle, like, man, that's it, not worth it.
That's
Because,
so helpful. I appreciate that. I need to hear that. Thanks.
So Lee, on the progressive overload,
yeah,
is it better to increase the weight or increase the reps? Or does it really matter?
both work. Let's use an example of like a dumbbell curl. I like to do this with dumbbells because, okay, let's say I'm doing 3 sets of 10 reps with a given weight. If I go to the next heaviest set of dumbbells, that's 5 pounds per dumbbell. Like that's too big of a jump. But maybe we can try to do 11 reps and then, then 12 reps, then 13, and build it up, say like to 15 reps. By the time you're doing 15 reps, we could probably drop the reps back down to 10, grab the next heaviest set of dumbbells, and then build it back up again. So I sometimes work within a repetition range for those type of exercises. For like a leg press or some big movements, I usually just make small weight jumps and keep the reps the same. Right? Does that make sense? Because dumbbells are ideally you'd want to be able to go up by like a 1 pound, right? Like go from a 20 to a 21, right? Not a 20 to a 25. Like that's too big of a jump, right? That's huge.
No, that makes sense.
Like there's a big difference between adding 5 pounds to a 200-pound deadlift versus adding 5 pounds to a 20-pound dumbbell curl. Like percentage wise is off the charts difference, a 10x difference. With those exercises, I usually do a repetition range, right? Versus trying to increase the weight because you're not going to. Bigger exercises, yeah, you should be able to make those 5 pound jumps. It doesn't seem like much. Like if someone's deadlifting 200 pounds and then they go to 205, like effort wise and perceived exertion is probably the same. There's such a small jump that you really can't tell the difference for a lot of people, especially if it's a comfortable working weight. But then if you keep adding that up week after week after week, I mean that compounds quickly. And then eventually you get to the point where they're not going to make that gains every week. They might make that 5 pound jump once a month, right? But it adds up. It adds up.